Everybody, video here for you today. We're going to talk about a very ancient site near the border of Alaska and Canada up here in the Yukon. I first read about this in Graham Hancock's America Before. This is a very interesting site, and this will just show you how archaeologists are treated that put dates on things that went back way before the Clovis. The site down here called Bluefish Cave is dated to about 24,000 years ago. And this had tremendous pushback by other archaeologists when it was reported, but it was right down here. Now here's the area, Bluefish Caves, and the Google Earth imagery is not that great down here, but it was over 40 years ago. A gentleman made discovery down here, Megafauna bones that showed signs of human butchering, and these were dated to 24,000 years ago, and he was kind of ridiculed and poo-pooed by the archaeological world. But let's just go over to an article and read here. Here is the article I will leave below. It says, From Vilified to Vindicated, the story of Jock Cinq-Mars, how a toxic debate over the first Americans hobbled science for decades. Here is a look at Jock Cinq-Mars in the 1990s. Let me just read here. It says, what I remember most about Jock Cinq-Mars the first time we met was his manner, one part defiance, one part wariness. It was 1994, and I had just flown into the small village of Old Crow in the northern Yukon. Cinq-Mars was waiting in the tiny airport, tall, grizzled, and unshaven. The French-Canadian archaeologist looked every bit the old Yukon hand. Still fit in his early 50s, he worked as a curator at what is now called the Canadian Museum of History in Gatineau, Quebec. But Cinq-Mars lived for summer fieldwork, combing Yukon riverbanks and rock shelters for traces of Ice Age hunters. In 3 hollows known as the Bluefish Caves, he and his team had discovered something remarkable, the bones of extinct horses and woolly mammoths bearing what seems to be the marks from human butchering and tool making. Radiocarbon test results dated the oldest finds to around 24,000 years before present. Here is a look at one of the openings to Bluefish Caves. It says, Bluefish Caves directly challenged mainstream thinking. Evidence had long suggested humans first reached the Americas around 13,000 years ago, when Asian hunters crossed a now submerged landmass known as Beringia. But it says Cinq-Mars, however, didn't buy that story, not a bit. His work at Bluefish Caves suggested that Asian hunters roamed the northern Yukon at least 11,000 years before the arrival of Clovis people. And did the Clovis people just descend from another group of people that was always here or here for a heck of a long time? These are questions I ask. It says other research projects lend some support to the idea. At a small scattering of sites from Meadowcroft in Pennsylvania to Monteverde in Chile, archaeologists had unearthed harsh stone tools and butchered animal remains that pointed to an earlier migration to the Americas. And here is a map at some of these pre-Clovis sites. There is Meadowcroft Rock Shelter, Page Ladson site, the Deborah L. Freakin site, and I have covered all these, the Paisley Cave site, and then the Manus Cave site in Washington. These are all sites that have evidence that people were here long before the Clovis. But just getting back to the reading here, it says, but rather than launching a major new search for more early evidence, the finds stirred fierce opposition and bitter debate. One of the most acrimonious and unfruitful in all science, noted the journal Nature. Cinq-Mars, however, was not intimidated. He fearlessly waded into the fight. Between 1979 and 2001, he published a series of studies on the Bluefish Caves, and it says, when he tried presenting evidence from Bluefish Caves at conferences, many archaeologists tuned out. Some even laughed. The idea of pre-Clovis people in the Americas seemed unfathomable to many at the time. It was a brutal experience, something that Cinq-Mars once likened to the Spanish Inquisition. At conferences, audience paid little heed to his presentations, giving short shrift to the evidence. Other researchers listened politely, then questioned his competence. The result was always the same. When Jacques proposed that Bluefish Caves was 24,000 years old, it was just not accepted. In his office at the Canadian Museum of History, Cinq-Mars fumed at the wall of closed mines. Funding for his bluefish work grew scarce. His field work eventually sputtered and died. Today, decades later, the Clovis first model has collapsed. Based on dozens of studies, we know that pre-Clovis people slaughtered mastodons in Washington state. dined on desert parsley in Oregon, and made all-purpose stone tools that were the Ice Age version of X-Acto blades in Texas, and slept in sprawling hide-cover homes in Chile, all between 13,800 and 15,500 years ago, and possibly earlier. And in January, a University of Montreal PhD candidate, Lorraine Bergeron, and her colleagues published a new study on Bluefish Cave bones in the journal PLOS 1, confirming that humans had butchered horses and other animals there 24,000 years ago. It was a huge surprise, said Bergeron. It says the new findings, says Quentin Mackey, an archaeologist at the University of Victoria in British Columbia, who was not a member of the team, are prompting the first serious discussion of Bluefish Caves nearly 40 years after its excavation. This report will tilt the scales for some archaeologists towards accepting the site, and for some it will inspire a desire to really evaluate the caves more seriously and either generate new data or try to replicate this study. But here is a look at the work done maybe 4.5 decades ago at Bluefish Caves. It says, but the study also raises serious questions about the effect of the bitter decades-long debate over the peopling of the New World. Did archaeologists in the mainstream marginalize dissenting voices on this key issue? And if so, what was the impact on North American archaeology? Did the intense criticism of pre-Clovis sites produce a chilling effect, stifling new ideas and hobbling the search for early sites? Tom Delahaye, an archaeologist at Vanderbilt University in Tennessee and the principal investigator at the Chilean site of Monte Verde, thinks the answer is clear. The scientific atmosphere, recalls Delahaye, was clearly toxic and clearly impeded science. Now, I will leave this link below. I'm not going to read the whole article, but it's pretty fascinating here. It says, it was a heady time. The dig yielded more stone tools as well as other evidence of human activity. A horse jaw with incisions resembling cut marks, and a mammoth long bone that seemed carefully worked and flaked, as well as a cutting tool made from the same bone. Samples from these finds yielded radiocarbon dates as old as 24,800 years ago. Here is a story from archaeology.org, new dates obtained for bones from Canada's Bluefish Caves. And here are some of those bones with the cut marks on them. It says, if confirmed, the results could push back human presence in the area, known as Beringia, by 10,000 years. Talks about the research at the University of Montreal. Talks about the dating here. It says the oldest of the bones, a horse's mandible that appears to have had its tongue removed with a stone tool, has been dated to at least 23,000 years ago. So I will leave this link below also. Now, I'm just going to read a little bit what Graham Hancock writes about in America Before. He talks about these early dated sites and the lack of acceptance from the archaeological world. It says, likewise, in the 1990s, Canadian archaeologist Jock Cinq-Mars excavated Bluefish Caves in the Yukon and found evidence of human activity there dating back more than 24,000 years, older than Meadowcroft and much older than the Clovis. The price he paid was high. His competence and his sanity were questioned, and when he attempted to present his findings at conferences, he was ignored or insulted. It says, as a result of such attitude, funding drained away from Cinq-Mars, and he had to stop his work, only to be proved correct many years later by a scientific study of the evidence from the caves published in January of 2017. That study, one of several that confirmed the existence of pre-Clovis sites of increasingly ancient dates, was titled Earliest Human Presence in North America. And only 4 months later, on April 27, 2017, Tom Demere's paper announcing the discovery of a 130,000-year-old archaeological site in Southern California appeared in Nature, and that was the Cerruti Macedon site. Here is one more link I will leave below. This has a paper published by Jacques Cinq-Mars in 1989. Has a map here, the location of the Bluefish Caves, talks about Beringia. Has a few other maps, and then it has a good overhead look at this cave system. The different entrances here, you can see there was 3 different ones right there. Going down a little farther, there is one entrance right there, but I have talked a lot about caves coming from the Ice Age times. People seem to be riding out ungodly weather on the surface of the earth and cave systems. Here is a look at the stratigraphic layering. This is a very informative website. Here is a dating chart, all the things that were found. It goes back, I believe, just under 24,000 years right there. And then we go down here. It has some lithic assemblies, some stone tools, stone fragments here found in the cave. I will leave this link below if you want to check this out further. But I think I'm going to wrap this one up. Here is one more story from 2017. Humans arrived in North America around 24,000 years ago. It says humans first arrived in North America 10,000 years earlier than previously thought, according to analysis of ancient animal bones found in northern Yukon, Canada. And here is a look at some of the bone fragments that were found, evidence of humans butchering them. But did they arrive 24,000 years ago? Or have humans been in North America as long as humans have been on Earth? Why is this large continent any different than any of the others? That is the question I ask. That is my report on the Bluefish Caves and Jock Cinq-Mars research. He had to wait 35 years to be vindicated. Should he had to wait that long? Well, some ideas aren't accepted right away. In fact, there's tremendous pushback, but history is constantly being rewritten, and old ideas are being pushed by the wayside. This site, evidence of megafauna being butchered by humans going back 24,000 years. I think it's fascinating. And the archaeologist who laughed at Jock Cinq-Mars years ago, well, maybe we should laugh at them for being so close-minded and just unaccepting of good research. That is my report on the Bluefish Caves and the archaeological work done by Jacques Cinq-Mars. He had to wait 35 years to be validated. Some pretty stubborn people in the archaeological world, but new thought processes and open minds are rewriting history. Hope you thought that was interesting. And you all have a very nice day.